Why are some of these folks wearing masks?
Well, I mean, that's a topic that's come up the past 2 or 3 weeks. As you know, one of the issues that we had, or that the people had, was the arbitrary stops, right? The stops were, being done solely based on somebody who would appear to be Latino or quote unquote undocumented, based on the way that they talk, the way that they look. So there's obviously has been a temporary restraining order here in LA County because there's a active lawsuit by the city of LA and seven other cities that join in that. And the conversation also comes up around these balaclavas. I know the balaclava that you're showing up there is one that would look like a standard issue one. But the balaclavas that we're seeing in LA County and the city of Huntington Park are balaclavas that have, skull masks. I mean, it's some pretty intense stuff that I would say are not government issued. Now, why has this come into the scrutiny that it's come into? Well, it's very simple. You see some of the actions that some of these agents are taking. One, some of those actions have been put to question about their constitutionality. Second, some of the actions that they're taking might reach the level of actual criminal activity in regards to them going hands-on or excessive use of force or even abuse under color of authority, because they are federal agents, they are law enforcement officers. You cannot hold someone accountable if you don't know who they are. And so I know that there's a counter argument there that they use it to protect their families or the doxing. While doxing has been, we've seen some cases of doxing, the data is not there of this mass targeting, this mass victimization of federal agents' families. What we have seen is that some of these individuals that are covering their faces don't want to be identified. They don't want people to know who they are, and that what essentially has done has emboldened them, to take action and to conduct themselves and be part of certain actions that definitely do border or bring up the question around, violation of civil rights, and I would say, to the extent of even the criminal element of, this kind of abuse under color of authority. So that's why it's the talking the talk of this week is a mask. And as you know, LA County today had a motion on the agenda, and I'm not sure. I believe it might have been approved, where the LA County is going to be having something on the books where federal agents are not going to be able to wear to be masked if they're conducting operations in the county.
There's also, Mayor, there's also articles that you see other folks are just wearing masks as well and acting as ICE agents and grabbing people's belongings. Has that happened in Southern California that you know of, or in Huntington Park?
We've had incidents at the national level where you have imposters that will slap on a vest. They'll slap on a balaclava and a a LA Dodgers hat, and then all of a sudden they become ICE agents. That was the whole premise around this identification, right? If they really are concerned about their safety, there has to be a way, whether an ID number, a 5-digit code, a QR code. There has to be a way that the public can have bona fides where they can say, yes, that is a federal agent. If you look at his shoulder, he has a federal ID code that can track if there are complaints. While they're conducting enforcement operations, there's some serious concerns and serious, questionable actions that I wouldn't even say would be borderline. There's some actions that have taken place that are violations of human rights, are a violation of constitutional rights, and these actions are being carried out by federal agents. And so, how do you hold agents accountable if you don't even know who they are? There is no badge number, there is no last name, and they're covered up. So, it really stems from that kind of accountability, that kind of federal service and service to government, whether it's the military, whether it's law enforcement. That's something that you should be proud of. You should not be ashamed of it. You shouldn't be hiding your face. If you're serving the public, whether it be the state government, whether it's local municipalities, whether it's federal government, you shouldn't be trying to hide your face, right? If you're trying to hide your face, then you're probably ashamed of what you're doing.
Are they hiding their face because they're concerned about their safety? They don't want to be targeted. I mean, I guess police. I mean,
The,
police arrest people, but
the
they don't wear a mask.
100%. That argument has been made. I know that there are And I'll tell you like this: there are some units that are specialized units, and when I was in the Marine Corps, I served with, some Army Special Operations, some MARSOC guys, even some SEAL teams. When someone is operational and they're dealing with very sensitive operations, they will cover up their masks. There will be no way for you to identify them. What we've seen is that 70% of the individuals that are being arrested have no criminal record. If this is basic standard immigration enforcement, you're not going after top cartel members. You're not going after anybody that is to that degree, to that level. Then it's hogwash. Then that narrative of, oh, because I fear for this or that or the safety, is hogwash. Now, if they are gonna wear these masks, then I would say the meat in the middle would be have some type of badge identifier if that's the case. But we have to give the public the tools, especially with some of the incidents that we've seen with the level and the way that immigration enforcement is being conducted in the United States. We have to give residents, Americans, the tools so that they're able to later on file those complaints and hold individuals accountable. Just the other month or 2 months ago, in my city, we had a family that was involved in a fender bender with ICE or Border Patrol agents. A week after that, that family put in a claim because they had damage to their Jeeps. They put in a claim. We have every right to seek redress from the government. 3 days after that claim, at 7 in the morning, they had about 35 to 45 fully armed, federal agents in tactical gear. They used a shape charge. They blew her window out. They blew their window and their door off its hinges. The only people that were home was Jenny, her 6-year-old son, and her 1-year-old son. And all of this, I remind you, was over a fender bender. And her boyfriend,
Wow.
George, who they were looking for, who, by the way, they racially profiled. They thought George was undocumented. Um, George had just left to work, and George turned himself in that day. He was out on a $5,000 bond, and you know what the charge was? Damage to federal property. So they did everything that they did: the blowing the door off, blowing the windows, sending a drone, using flashbangs, completely terrorizing this family, was over a fender bender, and they framed it as damage to federal property. Now they asked them for a quote. They said, "Hey, can we get a quote over what happened?" We don't comment on ongoing investigations, but let this be a reminder to anyone that tries to impede on any federal agency that this can happen to you too as well. And so, it just that's the kind of stuff we're dealing with, right? Is this kind of campaign of domestic terror, and this hyper militarization, and just kind of this overkill on some of the most subtle or things that it should really not be happening. And by the way, Jenny and George are both U.S. born American citizens. They're not undocumented. They are not visa students. They're not. They're born here.
So are they filing a claim against the federal government?
I'm not sure because last week we found out that those charges were dropped. Thank God that that family it doesn't have to deal with that. However, the charges were dropped with prejudice, meaning that at any moment the federal government can come back and bring those charges back. So I'm not sure if that was their intent. What I would have wanted was those charges being dropped without sorry, being dropped with prejudice, because they were dropped without prejudice, which means they can come back. So just to clarify that. So the families, obviously, I've talked to them. They're in fear of their safety. They are in fear that this is something that can quickly reactivate, that this is an experience that they can experience again. So there's a lot of trauma that they're going to have to process and deal with, and we're just talking about the adults here. We haven't even talked about the 6-year-old or the 1-year-old with some of the stuff that they have had to experience. So
So the Obama administration, at least based on everything that I've read, deported more folks.
100%.
Okay. Did you see ICE folks come in to your community, whether you were mayor or not at the time? This is going back, basically, what is it, 8 to 10 years ago, uh, with masks, grabbing people off of Home Depot or restaurants or wherever. Did you see any of that?
They call President Obama the deporter in chief, and you're right. Under his presidency, I believe there was a uptick in deportations. A lot of those deportations took place, and they were allowed to run their course, whatever the claim was for asylum or whatever the immigration status was. It was allowed to run this course, and even during that time of these, like you said, it was a high rate of deportations. We didn't see, some of the tactics. We didn't see, some of those I would say, very violent actions that have been taking place in our communities. We didn't see anything of that nature. I don't think I saw that. I'm only 37, but I don't think I've seen that, in my lifetime. I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah, it definitely puts a sense of fear and terror, especially when they're. I mean, I'm hoping that they're asking for people's um, IDs. I mean, most Americans don't carry proof of citizenship with them. So I don't know how they, when they pull somebody over, what is the criteria there? Does somebody turn them in, or are
So
they at random walking in looking for Latino and Latina or immigrant Muslims,
you
Middle
know,
Easterns?
Tom Homan went to sorry, Tom Homan, who is a border czar for Donald Trump. He tried to defend the racial profiling and said, well, it's a combination of different factors. And he's like, the location of where they're at, how do they look, do they talk with an accent? And I'm paraphrasing here. I'm not sure if those were his exact words, but
Sure.
my point is that he essentially laid out the definition of what racial profiling would be, right? And what we're seeing is that their tactics of racial profiling are not working because you're seeing, U.S. born American citizens that are becoming victims. I mean, we had it in the city of Montebello. A gentleman was coming out of his auto shop and was slammed to the ground. And the entire time he's yelling, I'm an American citizen. Like, what are you doing? I was born here. I'm an American citizen. And they are completely ignoring him. They're putting him in handcuffs. And so my, biggest concern is this: what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And I'm a lifelong Democrat, but mark my words, my biggest fear is that once Trump is no longer in office and the Democrats take control of the House and the Senate, that they're going to say, well, now it's our turn, right? And so it starts off with immigrants. Later on, it goes into Second Amendment, firearms. Then next, it's just freedom of speech. You literally voicing an opposition, or discourse, like where it's like a race to the bottom. And so my ask to people that might be listening to this show is, at some point the adults have to come into the room and we have to start having these very frank conversations, and we have to have there is an agreement with even friends that I have that are diehard red Republican. There's an agreement when it comes to the constitutional protections that this country affords us, and nowhere in there does it state that you have to be documented or undocumented to have those protections, and that's the beauty of this country.
Uh, you make some great points, Mayor. It starts with getting people out of their homes that are U.S. citizens. They may have an accent. They may be born here. They may not be born here. It starts there. Then the Democrats take over, which could be as early as January of 2007. What we're seeing, or we're hearing, or reading about this could be one of the biggest blue waves in American history. Uh, and they could go, hey, gun rights, we're going to get rid of gun rights. You're right. And then after that, it goes to freedom of speech by the next organ. And we start losing really the beautiful things about our country. I keep going back to Ronald Reagan's farewell speech when he talks about bringing people. This is a country that is so advanced, so innovative because of our immigration, because we keep on rejuvenating ourselves by allowing folks to immigrate to our country. Of course, we all want legal immigration. The challenge, and we've talked about this on this show many times, is our government is not addressing the legal immigration side. Figure out who we need to come, do a background check, and allow folks to come in as needed. Have a quota. This year, we're going to allow X, 2 million people to come in. By the way, as our uh, population is aging and it's not, our birth rate is getting close to zero, we are going to need more folks to come into our country. We just need to get them vetted out, make sure that they're not going to, none of us want people coming here
Well,
illegally and then live off the system, get free everything, health care benefits, the stuff that we Americans that have paid taxes to all of our lives. So let's have a legal immigration system that figures out how to get folks in appropriately, legally, and they get social security cards. They start paying taxes, and a lot of. Let me ask you this: we have had many people on this show that say, if you're even if you're undocumented, you're paying a lot of taxes. You're paying all your taxes. Is that
It's
do
called
you
I.
know that to be
It's
true?
called I. It's called I-10. It's called I-10. People have I-10 numbers. They'll pay into the system, and they can not tap into any of it. Not the Medicaid, not the none of the resources, but they pay taxes. I will say this: there is a bill that's being presented by Senator Alex Padilla. It talks about, I believe it's like 7 years and the pathway forward. I don't think we already met them in the middle with the criminals and the rapists, right? And they went after the tamalera, the lollipop man, the day laborer at Home Depot, and so you know it, it's like George Bush, right? You fool me once, shame on you. You fool me, right? You fool me twice, you can't fool me, right? Like it's one of those. It's like we can have that conversation about 7 years, about 5 years, of 4 years. What's the right years? I will tell you this: while we sit here and have an argument and fight amongst ourselves about removing a population that has intertwined itself into the fabric of what it is, what America is, right? That's what I believe in. I believe that the immigrant and documented population is intertwined with the fabric of our country. While we sit here and we pull on that thread and that flag starts to dissolve, let me tell you what is happening at the international level. You have, you know, China, Russia, that are building and strengthening relationships with different countries to the point of economic interdependency. And we're over here worried about, you know, Jose, Pepe, Maria, selling tamales, trying to get a job. And meanwhile, China, Russia, and these, international, actors are running circles around us. And by the time we get done and we look up and we say, look, we did a great job, spent billions, trillions of dollars getting rid of the immigrant. We look up, we're not going to have any friends at the international level. So with that in mind, and you can use that as a cautionary tale, but with that in mind, I believe that the pathway forward with the immigration issue is an amnesty 2.0. Let's address it. Let's get people and Americans back to work. Let's just restore. You know, I understand we can have the conversations about people that have criminal records and whatnot. I think that people can already see that there's already a meet in the middle. There's already a common ground when it comes to that, right? But I'm talking about the big picture here. I'm talking about even us as a nation. Like, I feel like this is one of those issues that is it's this population is being scapegoated when in reality, as the United States of America, a global leader, we truly are, missing the beat on what our role is, at the international level. So I just want to throw that out there because I think at some point that conversation is going to come up, and I think that, like I said, I think if we're redoing our budget and reallocating, $8 billion more, and now the budget is $54 billion to remove people and separate families and people. These are people that have entire lives here, families, businesses, own property. I mean, they themselves are the you know embodiment of the American dream. I
You
mean, we
know,
really have to look internally and ask ourselves, like, at what point did we get to the point where we drop so low that we are blind to the humanity of a man who is trying everything to just provide a better, life future for his children. And I think a lot of people lose sight of that. We have a lot more in common than we have different.